Yes, thank you. Throughout the day, I've been hearing conditioned and unconditioned, relative and absolute. And those phrases, always kind of just tear my heart just a little.
I have a hard time understanding your words. Perhaps speak closer to the mic.
Okay, is this a way that you can hear me now?
That's better, yes.
Thank you. I was saying that in hearing the phrases conditioned and unconditioned, absolute and relative, it just doesn't fit for me. It tears my heart. And I think of the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, and there's an identity there. And the identity infers, at least for me, an equivalence of value. And in the West, the teachers who I hear, not all of them certainly, but many of them, especially who derive their lineage from the East, there seems to me to be a slight preferencing of the absolute and the unconditioned. And as a human, I want to affirm my humanity, and I do affirm the equivalence of value if, for example, a thought arises, as ephemeral as it is, in the instant that it's occurring, it is truth, it is manifestation. Granted, silence arises afterwards, that's truth, etc. I'm wondering if, as the non-dual comes more and more to the West, whether there'll be an evolution of how it's taught, one that affirms humanity, one that affirms the heart, and one that affirms the preciousness of being not only human, but also resting in the absolute.
You know what? You're right. You're right.
Well, then I hope we can move in that direction. Thank you.
Hi. I'm new to non-duality, so I've been hearing people say that they are God, okay? So let's say you had a loved one and they were dying and you wanted to pray to them. Would you pray to yourself? Or, I mean, I guess in your non-duality person, you don't believe in that, I suppose, I don't know. But if you had to come down, you might come down to your dual self if someone you really loved was dying. So would you pray like, oh God, please heal my daughter or my wife? Or would you do such a thing? Because I'm new to non-duality, so I don't understand. I'm God. It's just kind of strange to me.
Define God.
To me, God is all-powerful, but he's also personal.
Is what?
He's all-powerful. He's this non-dual God, but he's also a personal God who knows me personally and wants to do nice things for me. In non-duality, is there not such a personal God?
What do you mean by he's a person? Have you met this person?
No.
Have you had dinner with this person?
Last Tuesday I did. No, just kidding.
You know, what non-duality is about is kind of about, you know what, Occam's razor? Scrap everything which is not proven, which is not experienced. You know, just the basic stuff. So, you know, like unicorns, little green beings on the other side of the moon. What's the point of anything which is not experienced or verified? What's the point of carrying beliefs that cannot be proven to be true or to be false? Dead wood, useless wood. Or false hopes. virgins in the afterlife, whatever. I mean, maybe disappointed.
So when you're your own God, you don't pray, would you pray to yourself?
But I asked you to define God, because when you say God, you know, there are as many views about the subject as there are minds almost.
I think God is a omnipresent, all-powerful, but also, in my definition of God, he's also knows me personally and cares about me and loves me.
Yeah. You know what? Up until I meet God, I am an atheist.
Okay.
Mean someone who has not met God as a person, as someone with, you know, this like an emperor or a big shot. I'd rather keep it simple, rely solely on my experience. Why would I tell you about things that are the product of my imagination and not facts that I experience? What's the point? I go to the movies for that, or I read literature. Otherwise, I try to escape my human predicament using artificial representations. But I know at the same time that I cannot rely upon these fancies because they are the products of my mind. So I'm kind of deluding myself. What is it that I can know for certain? I find that to be a good question. What is it that you can know for certain? That there is awareness, right. And also that there is something rather than nothing. What else can we know for certain beyond this?
We're having an experience now? We're having an experience now? There's something occurring between us?
Yes, that there is something rather than nothing that enters in the second statement. I don't think that we can know much more than these two things for certain. The question is, have we really milked these certainties that we have completely up to the very last drop? Or are we still living, entertaining fancies? Those who have eliminated the useless belief systems and focused on that which you can know for certain have found liberation, have found freedom and happiness. It's called wisdom, or it's called philosophy. Not the modern Western philosophy, but perennial philosophy. You see? Then what you discover, you can call it God if you want. If God is a word for you which hasn't lost its virginity. It was the case for me because I was raised by atheist parents and as a scientist. So the word God for me had kept its freshness. So I can call that God, why not? But often, a religious background is an obstacle because we become attached to the belief systems with which we identify. Often it's very easy, relatively easy, to liberate oneself from attachments to material things. But it's more difficult to, especially if you have made a big investment into our spiritual future, to see that perhaps we have missed the mark. It requires humility to go back to basics. What can we know for certain without killing ourselves?
After I listened to the last presentation that you had,
Oh, yes.
it was amazing. I wrote a question especially for you. The phrase science and non-duality creates duality. Science on one hand and non-duality on the other hand. How, in your perception, you can describe the science of non-duality, which would...
It would be a good question for the next session with a scientist. Let's put it this way. Science has a limited scope. It is the study of phenomena, and the discovery of the laws of nature that rule these phenomena by establishing models that have a predictive value. However, the scope of science is limited for many reasons. While it's limited to phenomena, then there is a need for peer review of, in other words, we need several witnesses of an event. So if a miracle, for instance, that is seen by only one person is not part of the admissible scientific fact. And there are a few other limitations which work perfectly for science. And science is a very legitimate and interesting endeavor. Science asks really the question, how? It doesn't ask the question, why, and even less the question, what? So philosophy, on the other hand, has an unlimited scope and asks the question, what? That's the distinction I would make.
Just to come back to the first question.
Speak closer to the mic.
Well, okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you for coming today. When you said that it's a good question as to what we know for certain, and somebody responded, awareness, and that's something we know for certain. But I don't really believe that, because I think believing for certain that there's awareness implies there's a payoff for it. There's a reward. And my belief and my thinking is there are only two things that human beings and people know for certain: that I'll speak for myself, that I'm alive and that I'm going to die. And they're the only two things that I know for certain.
Well, apparently you don't know that there is awareness in this moment going on.
I'm aware of that.
So you know that too.
I know there's a movement, but when you said it's important, the question, what do you know for certain?
Would you deny that you are hearing my words in this moment?
I'm alive and I'm going to die.
No, that's not my question. Are you denying that you are hearing my words?
I am hearing your words.
So the one who is hearing my words, I call it awareness. The reality, hearing my words, that you have acknowledged, I call that awareness, whatever this reality might be. Now, when you say, I'm certain I am going to die, what you really mean, I am certain this body is going to die.
Movie,
This body is going to die.
this person is going to die.
This body, right?
This person.
Well, you seem to make a difference between the person and the body. So what's the difference that you're making?
I believe that
Don't tell me what you believe. Tell me what is a fact, what you experience. We don't care about what you believe. Nobody cares about what we believe.
I believe
We care about what you experience.
I believe my body is part of my person, but when my body goes, everything goes with it.
You know what? Your beliefs are your problem. Don't ask me to handle your problem. You are responsible for your belief. I am not responsible for your beliefs. You understand?
It doesn't feel problematic to me.
So, yes, but that's fine. I understand that. But I cannot speak to your beliefs. The only thing I can address are facts.
The fact is, I'm alive and I'm going to die.
I would agree that the fact is that your body is going to die. Then we agree.
Linda, I've been interested in dream work and the unconscious. Obviously, in dreams, another reality is shown, the shadow. So I'm curious if you think there's value there in exploring that.
Well, right now we are not dreaming. We are in the waking state. So we cannot really explore the dream state from the waking state. In the waking state, there are two things we can explore. We can explore the field of phenomena, which is explored by science, which is explored also in other ways, through art, through relationships, etc. Or we can try to explore consciousness, the noumenal field. That is open too. During the dream state, the phenomena are different. We can play with the phenomena, explore the subtle world, or we can also keep somehow exploring the consciousness aspect of it, which, by the way, is the same as the one which prevailed during the waking state. The consciousness is the same throughout the three states: waking, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. So, just as any object of the waking state can refer us back to the consciousness that perceives it, any object of the other states can also take us back to this presence. If we have awakened as this presence in one of the states. In one of the states, this knowledge remains throughout the other states. Because in a sense, consciousness is a common denominator, if you will, of all states.
Thank you.
Okay, hi. You talked about the knowing for certain. In your experience, do you think an individual who has experienced that knowing for certain can talk about that experience and share that with other individuals in a way that would bring them closer to that experience? Or is that experience of knowing for certain a very individual experience that one needs to have?
You can always share your experience. We cannot really share a past experience. We can only share a current experience, really, in the moment itself. But that we can share without any limitations. Yes. The requirements are to be honest, truthful. That's all. You know, it's a free country. There is no law against sharing your experience or your understanding.
I meant it in the, not from the perspective of the individual sharing it, but the people who would potentially benefit from that sharing. Or to be more exact, do you think there is real value in sitting with a teacher who is helping, perhaps, in the direction of coming to a certainty, the experience of certainty, and starting from not beliefs, but basic experience and working the way from there? How much potential, from your experience, do you see in that process?
Well, it is about really communicating an experience and there are many ways through which this experience can communicate itself. The words are one way, because the words may lead to the understanding. And the understanding in those matters is always experiential. In other words, when we understand something about consciousness, it's because we experience consciousness. You see? How could we understand anything about consciousness without somehow seeing, visualizing whatever the word we use, having a glimpse of consciousness? You know? So that's important. So the verbal teaching is constantly pointing through the words towards this presence which perceives the words. But there are other ways to point towards this presence. normally a teacher is completely, as a human being, is transparent to, so that this presence flows not only through the words, but also through the body language, for instance. And, you know, when you listen to politicians, the words may be nice, but you can see sometimes that the body language is fake. And which means that somehow we know sincerity beyond the words. And that's somehow even more powerful than the words. And there is even something beyond the body language or the tone of the voice. There are many signals to us that through which this experience can communicate itself. And there is even beyond that a kind of peace in the background. When I met my teacher, something strange would happen. It didn't matter whether I would ask him questions about the truth or whether we would just remain silent or whether we had small talk. But something happened that I was kind of immersed without knowing it in the beginning, you know. And then I would say, oh, what's going on now, you know? Oh, in this background of peace. And I have no rational explanation for that other than the ones I've just it's a form of empathy, I would say, that this fearlessness somehow communicates itself, because the peace is based upon some kind of fearlessness. So yes, from experience, yes, it works. How it works, who cares?
Thank you.
Hi. So I'm a scientist, but I'm also an inventor.
Speak closer to the mic.
Hi. Oh, gosh. I am a scientist, but I'm also an inventor. And I think the point of science was to find a shared truth. And truth doesn't sit static. It has been used to create systems. Create systems, education systems, make laws. It gets put into databases. And what concerns me about the future right now is not just that which I know because I've experienced it, but how we widen the amount of things that we all know so that we can make decisions together for a better world. Truth isn't static, it gets applied. And so I see that what we've been missing through scientific truth is other agreements that we can all agree to that would be healthy, not, for, I guess, the soul or the other part of ourselves. So how do we extend from, in that range, from that which I knew through personal experience to that which we can all know and agree to, so that we can make a better world on those agreements?
Yeah. There's a French poet who said once, "Science sans conscience n'est que ruine de l'âme." Science without conscience or consciousness ruins the soul. Yeah. Science is incomplete. And also we have to make a distinction between science and technology or applied science. Science can be used for different purposes. In and by itself, it is neutral, right? It can be used to build weapons or to heal people. So, but the problems of the world are not going to be solved by science. The problems that we see in the world that surrounds us come from ignorance. By ignorance, I mean the belief we have to be separate entities, separate consciousnesses. And of course, we could say, well, now we have to save the world. We have to become a teacher and to remove ignorance from the world. But the world doesn't want ignorance to get removed. Otherwise, there would be not, whatever, a few hundred people here. There will be, I don't know, tens of thousands, like for political meeting or for concert by the Grateful Dead. You see? So obviously, people are not interested in this, so you cannot force the truth. They will get an indigestion. We have to accept the way things are. Our job is not to save the world. The world is doomed. I have news for you. The world is hopeless. And those who have tried to save the world, there have been problems. You know, Hitler, Stalin, they were world saviors. Jesus was not a world savior, by the way. He was a soul savior, but not a world savior. The world saviors, we have to be careful about those. So you could ask, what are you doing here? Are you trying to save the world? No! Hell no. I am a bird on its limb singing its song. Why? Because I enjoy singing. That's all. Some people enjoy listening to the music, and then there is a kind of mutual enjoyment. That's the only point. Celebration. That's all. From my view, you know, the world is doomed, but that's not a problem. But also, when you go to the truth of what you are, it becomes a beautiful meadow to play on, to celebrate, a tool of celebration. That which was a tragedy becomes some kind of comedy, because ultimately, nothing matters.
I think that's hard for children to swallow, though. We need something to give them a reason.
What is hard for children to swallow is the despair of the parents, especially when they hide it.
You spoke of communicating fearlessness, and that's certainly something I experience from you. And at the same time, of course, gentleness and love. And I wonder if you could say something about how the fearlessness came about. Love seems to be much easier than the fearlessness, at least for me. So I wonder, was it like all at once with a large realization, or in stages, or a later realization, that kind of thing?
The fearlessness comes from the knowledge that our reality is indestructible. That's all. And the way the teaching works is like a child who has a nightmare. The child is 4 years old, has a nightmare, then leaves his room, goes to the parents' room. The parents take the child in the bed with them. And the child listens to the very peaceful breathing of the father or the mother. And the fearlessness of the father or the mother communicates itself. And the fear leaves the child. That's how the teaching works too, a little bit.
Thank you.
At least that's how it worked for me. You catch it like the flu, you see? I caught it from my teacher, and then be careful who you hang out with. You may catch it too. And there is no immunization for that.
Hello. Yes, you've got this question a million times, but I still don't get it. But so in the deep, dreamless sleep, how do you know that consciousness is still there? I know you can say you can't prove that it's not there. So is that what you would say?
Okay. How do you know in the waking state, how do you know now that you are conscious?
Because I'm aware of the awareness.
Yes. So you don't know it because of something you perceive in the waking state.
Awareness is perceiving its awakened awareness.
Yeah, it's awareness perceiving itself. That can tell you that there is awareness. Otherwise, if awareness is perceiving a glass, then this experience is telling you there is a glass. So to know that there is awareness of the glass, you need to perceive something else than the glass. You need to perceive the awareness that perceives the glass. So there are two different kinds of experience. Perception of the glass, perception of the awareness that perceives the glass. So the second experience is awareness perceiving awareness. This experience is independent from the glass. In other words, this experience is independent from the objects of the waking state. And then so this experience is independent from the state. Something strange happens is that when you become interested in awareness itself, the quality of the sleep changes. And then you don't sleep any longer. It's paradoxical. The body sleeps. The mind dreams. You wake. You're always awake. No more sleep for you.
In my awake state, my experience and my consciousness is sometimes an illusion. How does one deal with that?
Okay. When you say, my experience is my consciousness is an illusion.
My experience, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
In order to make this statement, you must be the experiencer of the illusion.
Yes.
The question is the experiencer of the illusion itself an illusion?
That's what I'm saying. The experience of the illusion, I'm experiencing something that other people aren't. I look at something and it might be red, whereas it's actually green.
Yes, whatever you experience may be an illusion, but the experiencer of the illusion is never an illusion.
But-
Otherwise, you couldn't even make the statement that
Yeah.
it is an illusion. In other words, an illusion can never experience anything.
But should I trust my experience? Should I act on things that I experience? Because I have found that there are occasions where it's an illusion, that I'm not, my experience
No,
is not...
your consciousness, my answer is, we are out of time now. So my answer is, consciousness is never an illusion. It's not possible. Because an illusion is always an illusion for a perceiver. And the perceiver of an illusion is never an illusion. We are out of time, sorry. It was